Welcome to the Strategy Sherpa Show, a series of organic discussions between hosts David Chavez and a variety of notable business leaders centered around their most significant failures and how they handled those challenges, so listeners can learn from their most teachable moments and apply the lessons to their organizations. Now, here's your host, David Chavez.
Hello, everybody. This is David Chavez. This is Strategy Sherpa, the Strategy Sherpa Show, where we don't talk about everything great we've done. We talk about things that maybe we messed up a little bit along the journey. And I have a special guest for you, an amazing lady. I would tell you that she is one of my most respected CEOs, turning around a huge company and just making it work for her and all of her team. And her name is Debi Davis, and she works with Scott Manufacturing. Welcome, Debi, to the show.
Thank you very much, David. Nice to be here.
That's great. We'd be remiss if we didn't say something about being 9/11 today and all the people who passed away in the World Trade Center. It would just be remiss if we didn't say something about that. I know as a former military person myself, that day was very, very challenging for me, just watching that happen, especially on American soil. And I just want to remember all those people and all the great Americans who went and protected our country thereafter for quite a while.
Thank you, David. I feel the same way. Same sentiment.
Yeah. But let's jump into the show a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why we do this show, because we do this show this way. Because I think that oftentimes we hear a lot about people's successes and how they made it. In all those stories, there's all these other stories that seem to get forgotten of, like, mistakes and decisions that we made along the way. And so what we're trying to do at the Strategy Sherpa Show isn't to rub people's nose in the mistake. It's to learn from the mistake and help other entrepreneurs out there think about things a little bit differently, so maybe they don't make the same mistake, or they don't make the same mistake we made them. And so Debi's here and she's ready to start talking about a few things. But I just wanted to remind everybody, you can visit us at assuredstrategy.com if you're interested in learning about a little bit about what we do. And then Debi, let's just jump right in and let's talk about one of those things that that really got you and maybe made a decision that you made at the time, which seemed very good and turned very not so good for you, and then how you overcame that. So let's start off with tell us one of the issues that or one of the decisions you made.
Oh, well, it goes back about a decade now. But the thing that was most interesting, our former CEO was retiring, and it put us in a situation where we were finally brought into the fold of what was really going on. And I learned that his utter lack of leadership really left us with a scarcity of orders. It created an extreme reduction in revenue, resulting in us falling out of banking covenants, which was quite critical, and initiated the lack of our commercial banking relationship. So I was left trying to figure out how to manage a business without a good commercial bank.
Okay, so what you're saying is that banking, so you didn't have a good banking relationship, and because of the change, you are violating your covenants, and because you didn't have a good banking relationship, you ended up getting hurt by the bank. Is that what you're saying?
Very much so, because they didn't allow us an opportunity to mend the deficiencies. There was no time to remedy, and it left us basically without any real banking. And I was trying to figure out what I could do to keep us alive.
Okay, so give the audience a little bit of your background, and then we'll come back into this just real quick.
Well, I've been with Scott Manufacturing for 17 years, actually almost 18 years next month. But prior to that, I have a legal background and an accounting background, and I felt a lot of that I've parlayed into what I do now. And this the whole idea of the legal background also gives me that risk. I have a lot of risk aversion, so I'm always trying to look out for the company, and it's very tedious when you're not getting cooperation.
Yeah, and your manufacturing company, what do you guys specialize in? Because you're a specialty manufacturer, correct?
Very, very much so. Actually, David, we manufacture for the American utility industry when electrical distribution cabinets mainly and pole line hardware. And it's pretty common, very ubiquitous. You drive around your neighborhood, you're going to see probably one of our boxes.
Right, right. And so it's those big green boxes that sit outside of people's house, right? There are little switches in there that you guys build for the utility companies, correct?
Right. They could be other colors. Just I don't want someone to think they have a brown box or something. Not ours. We built whatever the color is needed. But yes, it is for distribution. It goes into a home or into a commercial business. It's the distribution level, so it takes high voltage and brings it down to medium voltage that you can use.
Yeah, so I've seen some of your products as big as a semi, really a fully loaded semi. So there's all different types of sizes. You build the specifications that the utility companies request. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That would be substations like you're referring to, down to small little metering cabinets to actually be able to measure the usage between two different businesses.
It's very, very, very cool. And you use a lot of steel. You do a lot of bending of that steel, welding of the steel, and then buying a lot of electrical switches and assembling the different products to make the switches that work inside of these boxes. It's pretty fascinating. If you've ever been in a manufacturing facility, it's pretty interesting when you start to see these things being put together. All right, so let's go back to the thing that you are talking about. So banking relationships. So the mistake you guys made was not having strong banking relationships, and the company was falling out of the banking covenants. And banking covenants, if you don't know, when you have debt or anything of any size, the bank puts some restrictions on you, and you have to stay within these guidelines, or else they can call the debt. So do you want to explain a little bit what happened there, Deb?
Well, that's exactly what happened. As our revenue was nearly absent with the CEO, who was also in charge of sales at the time of his departure. And as he left us with 1.6 million in a backlog, which didn't even cover 1 month's worth of revenue. And by the end of Q1, we were upside down by $895,000, which lost the bank felt that they could not be able to tolerate. So they had made some recommendations to try to help, but they did try to help in the beginning, but some of the decisions I made based on their help ended up backfiring. I brought in a GM and a consultant to basically try to remove me from the company and take over the company. And he was very self-serving. So that was quite a learning experience for me that nearly left us holding the bag when it came to financials. And we were, I have to put it nicely, he also brought in his friends to help us as well. And his friends were first working remotely, and then they came in and started working in our manufacturing area. And a lot of the work they did was actually detrimental to the company and really messed up our scheduling. So it compounded our problem.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that you brought in a consultant to help fix some of these banking relationship problems.
Right.
And what the consultant did, and this was really shocking to me, because it's been a while now since we started working together. Do you know how long it's been?
I believe we're in our 5th year.
Yeah. So this is about 5 years ago when Assured Strategy started helping you. And I remember sitting down and talking to you, and you talking to me, and you told me that you enjoyed what I did because you saw me speak.
Yes.
You were very interested in hiring me, but at the same time, you were very afraid of hiring me. And you told me why yeah. And so why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what the consultant did, like to get you in the position, like what was he trying to do? I said, tell some of those details a little bit.
He was gathering, he was actually gathering some of our longtime employees to gather up their shares to vote on getting me removed, as well as our president at the time. He had gathered a lot of support in that and tried to really besmirch my reputation. And as the CFO at one time, I had a deep understanding of what was going on, and about an 8-year experience with the CEO. And he supplanted everything I put in place and decided that he knew better than I did. And he had enough of his friends in the business here as well that he had recommended, that ended up they were able to put pressure on some of the owners of this company, because remember, we're an employee-owned company, and as an ESOP, it's very easy to sway people that are business-minded, but actually with little experience.
Right. Yeah, they're just naive in the way that business works, but they're very focused on the business making money because they have a vested interest in that happening, right?
They're passionate for the company, and he spoke very eloquently. He was very convincing, and he had me fooled in the beginning. And as I realized he was undermining, and also he had nicely stated that on 1 or 2 occasions that he wished he could actually run this company because he could make lots of money. And he was speaking of himself. And he was trying to convince me to sell special shares to him, which of course would be a violation of ESOP and IRS laws. But he was getting them convinced that that was something that could be done.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was doing everything he could to basically do a coup d'etat on you.
Absolutely.
And the president also. And you had both been at the company for quite a while at that point. You probably 13 years, right? 12,
Right.
13
The
years.
president at that point was probably 35 years.
Yeah, and Ernie is one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. I mean, talking about a genius at what you guys do. I mean, he literally can just look at something and know it's wrong or it's right. It's a pretty amazing skill.
He is the heart of the company for sure.
Yeah, and he's a great innovator. I mean, the guy can start to look at something and just, it's like an art. He can just put it together in his head really quickly. So it's really interesting to watch him. So this guy came in and he's trying to push you and Ernie out and trying to take over even any means possible. And so I think that what you're really saying is the challenge was that you hired somebody hoping that they would come in and help you guys get focused on maybe some of the things that were really important to the bank so you could resolve these issues. And what this guy did is maybe took you further into problems to benefit himself.
Absolutely. He brought in additional consultants that were also not able to look at the root problem, but they saw the cash cow that Scott was at the time, and a future cash cow for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so basically they were trying to undermine you and Ernie and the whole team, when all you guys needed was some help to get you refocused so that you could get your revenue back, because there wasn't a lack of work that you were experiencing.
Not at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, this is a Strategy Sherpa Show. We're getting ready to go take a break. I just wanted to say to you that we have a couple of events coming up on the 14th of September. That's this Thursday. We have Warren, and scaling your business doesn't have to be exhausting and time consuming, with 5 proven tools he's going to go through that help you think about your business different. And again, so it's a hour-long webinar. It'll be really informative, and Warren's just such a great personality. You'll love being with him on the 14th of September. It's from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. And then we have a free webinar on how to build accountability through rhythms on October 26th at 1 to 2 p.m. Well, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll see you on the other side. Hey, everybody. We're back, and we're back with Debi Davis with Scott Manufacturing, and she is telling us a little about the consultant nightmare that she had. And, look, I'm a coach and a consultant myself. And I think that one of the hardest problems I usually have when I'm talking to a company is maybe the consultant or a consultant that has been the coach or the consultant that's been there before us. And why I say it that way is because it creates fear in people's heart. And so you experienced this. This guy was trying to take your company away, wasn't helping you with the bank covenants. Like, what are some of the specifics that you realized through him? Like what were some of the lessons that you learned from this?
One of the very interesting things was he had an opportunity to really get inside of the company in a way that he actually was gathering a lot of trust from everyone. He was very charismatic. So I want to explain that first. In the beginning, I felt very trusting in him as well. I thought he was going to come in and save us. But he brought in consultants that would help us review inventory. He brought in consultants that would look at our cash flow. He had a lot of different ways of structuring it that appeared to be so appropriate and so perfect. But what he didn't do is he didn't delve into the personality of the company. He didn't have any support in core value, and he wasn't people oriented. And so he was changing the culture of the company. And as an employee-owned company, he had no awareness of how tight-knit the company would be. And I don't want to use the term family, but very much of a team on the manufacturing floor, because we are fully integrated, as you mentioned. We build everything from the ground up, from sheet steel coming in the door. And he was reviewing things and deciding that he felt we made a mistake when the way we bought steel, or we made a mistake on some of the relationships. And some of our relationships went back 10, 15 years. We were actually getting preferential treatment. And he was challenging on how we actually viewed a lot of our relationships. And I would say the best thing would be he looked at some of the private label work that we were doing with some pretty big companies. We were producing products for them. And he was challenging the viability of that work when we already had an established relationship with some very big name companies for over 10 years. And he was breaking up those relationships as well.
Right. And so this guy came in and he was basically not understanding the nuances of the company, didn't take the time to really understand the nuances of the company, and started directing you and the others in the company. And it started to make you guys feel a little uneasy. Is that correct?
Very much so. And there was a short period of time where I was very ill for about a week. I was out of work for about a week. And during that time, this is very interesting, as his actual annual contract had expired during that time. And he continued on. And I understood at that time that the contract was over, because we had signed a contract the previous year. And at that point, he was continuing on a part-time level as our general manager. And at the end of, let's say, 8 months, when things really became, my awareness of what was going on with him got stronger. At that point, he actually reminded me that we were in a contract, when in fact, I pulled the contract forward and said, I don't have a signed contract. And he claimed that I had in fact signed it during the time that I was out, when I was very, very ill. So it really did, his colors really showed, but it wasn't obvious in the beginning. And I think that's the cautionary tale that I learned. And I think that was what you encountered with me when I first met you, is it's like, come in and have wonderful opportunities to discuss things. And you yourself asked me, do you want me to give it to you straight? Do you want me to pull off the Band-Aid? Do you want me to sugarcoat it? I said, no, after what I've been through, just pull off the Band-Aid. And I think it gave you a challenge as well to, that you have to put up with me, because at that point I had a pretty tough skin.
Yeah.
Because he did a lot of damage. In fact, I had one meeting coming up after I had terminated our relationship, after I had it completely out of the building, and he had them convinced that they needed him to come in and do some temporary work during monthly meetings or quarterly meetings, because he was the only one that could really make things happen. And I actually had to overcome that. And of course, that worked to my advantage, because I did see the passion for the company, and my understanding is really, with your help, of course, is really what we needed.
Yeah, yeah. So I helped you rip off the Band-Aid. And what would you tell people out there when they get a consultant or a coach? What should they do before they actually hire this person? What were some of the things that maybe you did? Because I remember you telling me the story, you asking me some more poignant questions, and then you called references of mine. And so you did things a little bit differently, but what else did you do that maybe I didn't even see at the time?
Well, what I did not do is I took it from a recommendation, and I also belonged to a group that did some mentoring and did some coaching for me that had also recommended him as well. And so I thought I had done a good vetting, but I actually had not done thorough vetting. I did not go to actual active, um, like his other customers. I did not check with other clients and confirm what they were satisfied with what he did. It was, that was a big mistake. That's something I would say is just a recommendation of people that work with someone it did not mean that he was good in our circumstances. And I think just because doesn't mean it's not a good excuse. And that was really one of my embarrassing moments
Yeah.
that,
So now I haven't worked with you. I worked with you for 2 or 3 years, and then one of our team members has been helping you for about 2 or 3 years now, and that's been a really good journey for you because I sort of the person who helped you turn things around and get it thinking about a little bit different. And now we have something that's a little more sustainable, and you guys are just kicking rear now. Is that fair?
absolutely. I had several team members that I felt were really up and coming. I had engaged them in all different ways, tried to get them into leadership training and other opportunities with, going to seminars, going to some other things. And actually, I recommended some reading because I am a big, I think self-learner. I think that's one of my things is I've always, if I don't know it, I'm going to pull a book, I'm going to learn, I'm going to read, I'm going to do everything I can. And I've received some really forward-thinking staff from all of the group that I had vetted inside the company. And they were able to look at some of our past challenges and learn from them and help lead us into future growth. And that's one of the things that we got when we brought in Assured Strategy is
Yeah.
bringing you, David, is the fact that they were given some coaching and support to help them strengthen themselves, because I think they were pretty shaken by what had happened as well and didn't feel that they necessarily have all of the information they needed to move forward, which they have since. They're working really hard for me.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I know your information isn't public, but I can tell you guys that she's more than doubled the revenue over about a 2 to 3 year period, and probably quadrupled, maybe even 10 times for profitability. And
Absolutely.
and it's just amazing to watch. So let's talk about you because you gave me a few different challenges that you've had, and we had about 4 minutes till the break. So let's frame up the next one. So the next one was an inventory issue, huh?
Oh, our inventory was a mess. Our valuation was the inventory valuation was inaccurate. Our bill of materials had to be corrected, and we weren't even sure what the costing was. Excuse me. We weren't aware if we were making a profit or not. And that's one of the things that we learned after bringing in you, David, and your entire team at Assured Strategy is we found out that our gross profit margin was well below industry standards, which was critical. Our pricing was off, and the material valuation. We would build a product, send it out, and believe that we were making money when in fact it was hurting our margins, and we weren't covering our overhead.
Right. Because pricing was changing so much, even in your field, because the electrical grid is expanding at a rapid rate.
Absolutely.
And all the pricing has gone up tremendously. And then you guys just didn't keep up with that because of long-term contracts. And I got you guys to think about it just a little bit differently. But a lot of it you guys already knew. I was pretty impressed with how much you guys knew. It was just helping you. I think I was probably the Assured Strategy team was probably just the catalyst of helping you see things you already sort of knew were there. I remember walking through the warehouse or the manufacturing facility with you, and we were looking at the inventory and looking at all the old inventory sitting there that was just obsolete and things like that. And we were trying to find space in the facility. We couldn't find any space, and we just started getting rid of all this stuff, right? And
Absolutely.
really helped cash flow that way too, because there was a ton of money that just wasn't, and products we weren't ever going to use anymore, right?
Absolutely. A lot of it was obsolete. And also for some of the old guard who has long since left, they didn't feel comfortable taking out the old products. They felt they might come in handy sometime. One of them had his comment, good enough is good enough. And we say good enough is not good enough. And that's a change, because the lack of capacity, the lack of space actually affected us. And I finally convinced members, when you see a pallet full of product, represents a Cadillac, try to get them to understand that one little pallet of items was such a high value that they needed to have the shelf space and not old decrepit items.
Right. And I think I love that you put it in the sense that every pallet was a Cadillac. It's a Cadillac of money sitting there too, right?
Right.
And that was really some of your challenge, because you were cash flow starved at that time.
Right.
The
software that we had was horrible. It was more of a manual system. So we brought in a new software believing that was going to be one of the things that would solve some of our problems. This is prior to Assured Strategy coming in. And I wasn't aware that the team at the time that I had inherited was actually incapable of being able to put together the right information so they could data map our program into our new software. So I was led to believe that they were the dream team that I would need to install, and it ended up that they were dismally lacking in the ability to manage in a modern system. And it was quite interesting. I had to recognize and actually invite some folks to actually retire out of that system, but with a really nice severance package, actually. But it was challenging when you can't fix a problem when you don't have the right folks in there. But now I have a phenomenal team.
Yeah. So just to stay with that just for a second, and we'll come back after the break and talk about it a little bit more. But you're talking about installing the ERP system that you had purchased, and the first go around wasn't very successful. And we'll pick it up on the other side with that. So I just wanted to make sure that I said this, because I said it wrong the last time. All of our webinars are 1 to 2 Central Time, not Pacific. So please forgive me. I don't want you to show up 2 hours late. So the first one, as I said, was how to grow your business with 5 proven tools with Warren Sager. And again, he's trying to help you scale your business and think about it a little bit differently. On the 26th of October, we have how to build accountability through meeting rhythms by Kane Pekovic, my partner in the business. And she's actually asking a question: is your organization a lack of accountability, and how to build accountability through the meetings? And on November 9th, we have accountability could be so easy, but all the things that go into lack of accountability. And this is a 1-day live workshop where we're actually diving in and doing some exercises and help people really realize how to build accountability. So we're going to come back on the other side of the break, and we'll get back to Debbie and talking about this ERP system. Thank you for everything so far, Debbie, and we'll see you after the break, okay?
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm sitting here with an amazing CEO, Debi Davis, who runs a company called Scott Manufacturing that is a specialty manufacturer in the electronic switches that sit outside of your house, outside of buildings. And again, I'm simplifying it by saying that it's a very complicated business. They basically build switches to spec, or conduits for the electrical grid. And it's really, really interesting what they do. And Debbie, we were talking about it right before we went to break. You were just getting to the point. And one of the things I like to say to people is, the cost of an ERP system is not the software, and it seems like it's always evaluated from the cost of the software. I just say to people, multiply that by 10, and that's probably your real cost to install it. I haven't really seen an ERP system become effective without spending $100,000 to $250,000 in costs getting it set up. And I would say that resources, that includes resources and everything else, because no one ever thinks about the resources that are involved, like my people's time. And that's where you ran into a little bit of problem too, right?
Absolutely. And did not even realize that a couple of $100,000 would have been nothing compared to what it ended up costing us by doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You are exactly right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you did wrong. So like, because these ERP decisions, CRMs, things like that are really complex, but really could change your business. I think people need to think about them correctly and the magnitude of what you're actually doing.
Well, particularly for us in a manufacturing environment. Excuse me. What the build of materials is actually what are all of the components, all of the steel, everything that goes into building one of our products. That has to be properly mapped, not just the raw materials, but also the labor, the time, machinery uptime, all the capacity, all that needs to be collected and put into the ERP system. And if you haven't thoroughly measured all of those activities and regarded every piece, and you don't think about the nuts and the bolts, if you don't have all of that included when you add it together into the system, you're not going to get reliable numbers. You can't trust the system. And we've been with this software we had the software for so many years and nobody trusted it. So there's a lot of manual systems and a lot of workarounds that were going on that I wasn't even aware of. And not that they were doing anything necessarily wrong. They were trying to make it work. I mean, that's the thing about our team. The people are amazing, but they weren't able to work the system the way it was because it wasn't initiated properly. If we had invested, let's say $250,000, hired several outside people to actually gather the information and have it ready for input, we would have been well ahead of the game. Right. But instead, we've worked frustratingly for years and years. And
I remember when I came in, there was another year of pain before we actually took the steps necessary. I remember one of the meetings, what I say to CEOs often is, let's get the experts in the room to talk about it. And the experts aren't sitting in the executive office. They're down on the line doing the work every day. And we brought a whole bunch of them in to the meeting. And the people that we selected to come into that meeting, I don't remember who selected them, but I know you had a little bit of say in that, and you didn't micromanage it, but you had a little bit to say. But I would just say that, man, they came in and just gave it to us, right? They started telling us that we can't rely on anything in the system. We have all these workarounds, and we were just literally after the meeting, we had to have another meeting just to process all the data and feedback we got. Right. Yes. So we really missed the boat on that one, in the sense of you were trying to get it done. You kept on trying to patchwork what had been being done. And what did you end up doing finally to really rectify the problem? Because I know that was a very costly mistake.
Well, initially, I moved somebody into actually, that was their primary job, was to pull it together. Unfortunately, he was over his skis, as they say. It was well beyond his ability, and I gave him about 60, 90 days, followed up with him, and his first Band-Aid fix actually crushed our system for about a week. We actually call it we had a crisis of about a week, and it took almost all of my best players, right? My utility players were busy trying to fix the system so we could move forward with a Band-Aid. But now we have a information systems manager. He's able to look at it and dissect everything that we really need. That the time that we would have saved in the first place now covers his salary easily, like not even for a thought. And he's able to look at it and bring in what you said, the specialists, the SMEs, the subject
matter expert.
Yes, they come in now. They come in off of the floor. they were very tentative at first as well, because that was new for them, but they've all grown stronger in that. And most of them have been promoted up as managers rather than even as floor supervisors or foremen that they were, because they see and they do. So it's like, even like we were talking about Ernie, they have the actual props to do what it is that we need, rather than feeling our way. I guess that would be we're kind of feeling our way through it now, and the trust level has really increased, which is paramount for any business, is having that trust of them knowing that we actually respect their information and we need their help.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that you hired a subject matter expert to manage the ERP system and really got them focused on getting the components, because in a manufacturing facility, the components and the amount of time we spend on what we're manufacturing and assembling really together is really critical in an ERP system. And they did all those time studies, and you hired a really good person to run the processes in the company. And then you hired a subject matter expert on the actual ERP system, so that the two of them work together to get along with all of the employees, line employees included, and really got this thing set up correctly. And then you started getting some information so you could really make really good decisions, which led you to start selling some of your more profitable products.
Absolutely.
Because the market was a lot bigger for some of the most profitable projects, and you didn't even understand that they were the most profitable, and the market was that big.
Absolutely. It actually allowed us to raise our prices and be able to back it up.
Yeah.
And in our business, sometimes you have to be able to provide the indices and give an indice which would explain what a price is going to be in the future, and based on the past pricing. And the utilities, a lot of those are independently owned, and a lot of them have shareholders. And so you can't just put in a price increase. They have to go through several levels. And being able to know what we were actually what our actual costing was, allowed us to make those changes, which dramatically helped our bottom line.
Yeah, that's so well said, and I love how you went into that. But let's go into this last thing. So that's just great, and I think it's really good. So do your research on the ERP system, what you thought you had done, but make sure you understand the time commitment, the specialties you're going to need to get the system into place, and the amount of resources in the company it's going to cost you to really get everything into place. Is that being said well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. So let's talk about, you gave me one more, and I love it that you gave me three, because I think of it like, hey, we all make bad decisions, but at the time we're making them, we think they're great decisions, right? And so,
Yes.
so let's talk a little bit about a sales director and that situation, because you sort of walked into that when you took over the helm of the company. It was already going on.
Right. Problem is, I had a sales director that was a poor performer, and it wasn't a comfortable situation to come in and tell him that he wasn't doing a good job. So I thought my brilliant idea was to bring in a director of sales administration that would actually do the actual work that was expected, to put together a sales plan, to be able to direct where most profitable jobs were, to look at territories. And we use manufacturing representatives for selling throughout the country. And so I brought someone else in to do that. And that was another big mistake, embarrassing mistake. But
What made that embarrassing?
The second one made it worse.
What was embarrassing about the second one?
Wasn't able to follow any of this, put together a sales plan, was incapable of actually following up on what was necessary, wouldn't do their homework, and was also ineffective when it came to building a sales plan. And the sales plan is paramount. I mean, we needed a sales plan in place. And without the sales plan in place, they weren't even able to hold our sales team accountable. The sales team themselves, on their own, independently, they're great. but you can't run a company by people with a sales team that has autonomy. And that's, they're great, but they need that support. And so that was a big mistake on my part.
Okay. And so you bring this person in and they start to basically hurt your company, really, because of this going on, right?
Right.
All right. Well, let's talk about that on the other side. I think we're getting ready to go into another break here in a few minutes. And we have a little bit of time, maybe. So I wanted to remind everybody about the webinars that we're doing this Thursday, and it's from 1 to 2 Central Time. And it's Warren Sager, one of our coaches, and he's going to be talking about 5 tools that'll improve your business. And then we have a live event in November about accountability in Phoenix, Arizona. I really encourage people to check that out. It's one thing to think about accountability by numbers, which numbers are very important, but it's also about human behavior and putting them through the change management process. And Debbie alluded to that a little bit in the ERP system issue she had. She had to get the people's mindset on really making the change and really investing the time and the energy into that change to make it happen. And we're going to be talking about both of those things, the number side of it and the human activity side of accountability, and what are those elements that really make that happen. So Deb, let's get you on the other side and let's take a break, and then we'll continue talking about the sales director and then the administrative support that you had hired for them, and how this really affected the sales and the outcomes of the company. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez. All right. Welcome back, everybody. This is Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez, the Strategy Sherpa, and we're sitting here talking to Debi Davis, and she is telling us a little bit about some of the decisions that didn't work out as well as she would have liked them to. And listen, I think that really important to say this in the show at least a couple of times. At the time we're making these decisions and the information we have, it always seems like it's the right decision. And I think all entrepreneurs are in this position where they end up making decisions with the information they have at the time, and they think it's a really good decision, but it turns out not to be. And so we are talking a little bit about your sales director and then administrative support. So you had the wrong people in here. This was really hurting the company because it was really affecting the profitability, but also the revenue of the company, because they were trying to sell all specialty one-time things, and some of what you do has to be a little bit repetitive to get some value out of it. And you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. They were going after what we call the shiny objects, especially the sales director. He was so impressed by building some of these, as you said, like the size of semis. That takes up a lot of resources in the plant. It takes a lot of design time. They make big money, but the cost is well up there. So the profitability is no better than some of the smaller items, which you're right, can be pushed through the plant much quicker. And repeat business, of course, is always good. You get your first article, and then if you build something over and over again, which a lot of our big utilities do rely on that. We have products we've been building for 40 years for them. So, big, shiny objects are not necessarily profit pieces. Nice to do that when a big customer requests one, because that's our relationship. But to go searching for new ones, new opportunities to do something fancy is not necessarily a way to run a business.
Yeah, that I call it squirrel chasing, right? Your sales director was actually squirrel chasing, and we kept on trying to share with them that, hey, based on what the information we had at the time, because the ERP system still wasn't working, but we were trying to do some calculations outside, that these bigger projects were just killing us financially, right? They were great for our ego.
They look pretty when they left the plant on the truck.
And we got to pound our chest a little bit and go, yeah, we're so great, we built this. But when the check came in to the bank, and after the cost, there wasn't a lot left. So
Not at all.
yeah, exactly. So, and that's a valuable lesson there. So you had the wrong person in the wrong seat. What did you do? Just real quick, share what
Well,
you did.
the best solution was to actually the administrative person decided to move on to another opportunity, which was nice. Then I didn't have to feel badly about that. The other person trying to hold the sales director, trying to hold him accountable, that was challenging because he really had more interest in selling the big shiny objects. So we had a meeting of the minds, and he left on his own, which was nice. It's always preferable when someone decides that they can do better somewhere else. And I actually took over the sales team. I took them on more like a support, since business development is always my thing. So I, was able to accompany them on some sales meetings and meet with some of the customers, which I would do anyway as the CEO. But that became I wasn't able to dedicate full time to them. So finally, I just decided my CEO responsibilities were much more intense and much more valuable to the company than for me to manage a sales team. So I was fortunate enough to find an excellent sales director. I brought her in, and she is She has been working with the sales team in designing a playbook that actually narrows their focus, gives them much more support, and I'm able to be the cheerleader on the side, if you will, and
Right.
being happy for what they're doing. And it just makes it much more pleasant for everyone.
But
And
but I want to capture something you said there. So I'm sorry to interrupt you
of
because
course,
we're just running out of time because it's
of course,
really important what you said. You actually took and jumped in to lead the sales department because it was so important at the time of the company. And I think a lot of CEOs need to realize this, and especially in a really rapidly growing mid-sized company, because you're up there in the revenue and you have quite a few employees. You have a couple hundred employees. And when you really think about these things, it's not viable for me to really run the sales department. But it was absolutely critical at the time because you had to figure out what the heck was going on in there.
absolutely.
Is that a fair statement? Because no matter what we were doing to try to figure it out, it was like there was some curtain in front of us and we just couldn't understand what was going on.
That is so true. I also realized that marketing was poor. I was able to assess that we needed to bring in a marketing person. I have a very strategic marketing person now. We actually went through a rebranding. We introduced ourselves in the market, new and improved, if you will. We've been around over 50 years, but our rebranding has really put us in the forefront. And we're now able to compete on the same level as our multi-billion-dollar companies. And we have respect in the market with them as well. And we do a lot of, we communicate a lot with our big suppliers. Some of the biggest players in the world now look at us as someone even setting up VMI, vendor management systems. So there's a lot of the respect and things. And I don't want to say I did it on my own. That's not just me, but putting us out there, I think supporting the sales team and getting out in market is something that wasn't happening before. And now I think that a lot of that has to do with a lot of our big improvement in revenue and our actual position in the industry and the market.
Yeah, I just want to say I have so much respect for you and all the hard work that you've done. I think that as a CEO, you haven't let the position get the best of you or your ego. You're willing to roll up your sleeves and help your people when they're stuck. And it's just amazing to watch what you've done with the company. And I know we don't actively work together anymore. I'm coming in and helping with a few retreats just to get us to think a little bit strategically again at a little higher level. But at the same time, my team has been helping you and you have very close relationships with them. And I just wanted to commend you for all that you've done and you having the humility to talk about some of the things you talked about today. And so, thank you, Debbie, for your time today, and thank you for sharing. And do you have any final closing words for everybody?
Well, the nice thing that we were able to accomplish with the help of your team is getting our core values firmly in place.
Yeah.
It is it built a trust level, and the people all the way to the very lowest level employee, all the way to the top. Everybody understands the core values is what manages everything. All decisions go back to our core values.
Yeah, we're out, everybody. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show. Thank you for coming today. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.